Eileen first and then Jimmy. If I got that wrong, I apologize.
Okay, yeah. I'm actually going to go back to what we were talking about in terms of sexuality and say lesbians that want to sleep with women and gay men who want to sleep with men and not trans men or, well, I don't even want to call them that, trans-identified males or trans-identified females or whatever. So I'm going to go back into that. I have tried to figure this out myself, and the best I can come up with is this. Ever since I probably hit 16, 17 years old, I cannot count, and I am very far from young. I cannot count the number of times I've heard from men, I'm a lesbian trapped in a male's body. And this is straight men, which, every time I hear that, they think that's very funny for whatever reason. I have no idea why. Maybe particularly to me because I'm not straight. I have no idea. And I don't find that funny at all, particularly since I'm not interested in sleeping with them. But it makes me wonder if supposedly there are two types of men that go through transitioning. One is what I consider to be old-fashioned back in the 80s and 90s transsexuals who felt that they really did belong in a female body for whatever reason, and they went through the years of therapy, then eventually lived as a woman for a certain amount of time, and then eventually you started taking hormones. I actually knew a couple of people that did that over like a decade, but this was back a long time ago in the 80s and 90s. Now, where it seems like there's a lot more AGP trans, those are the people I think that are pushing so hard to want to be able to sleep with women, as opposed to the more I could be wrong, but as opposed to the more traditional trans people. I may or may not be correct about that, and it may be both. I'm not sure. But what it makes me wonder is if that backs the theory of either they're straight, which means they were straight men to begin with, so of course they're attracted to women, and when they transition, that means of course they would identify as being lesbian because they were straight men to begin with. But if go ahead, I'm sorry. Somebody wanted to ask me about that? No? Okay. So that's one of the theories I've come up with. The other one being, if it's, the couple of guys that I knew back in the 80s and 90s that transitioned the old-fashioned way, the way I think about it, as opposed to the very quick way now that people do. And back then, people didn't start transitioning until they were adults. So they had completely gone through puberty and didn't start transitioning until they were at least 18, 19, 20 at the earliest that I ever knew anybody to start transitioning. Most of at least the two men I knew, the two trans-identified women that I knew at that point, or men, I should say, that were interested in women were equally interested in sleeping with men and women. They tended to be bisexual. And my opinion on that was that simply their sexuality was fluid. And that did have something to do with the fact that they were transgender. I didn't know them to be completely straight or completely gay once they completed their transition. But it seems to me that the younger trans people that I've met, not that I know very many of them, but that I've seen talk online or read things that they've written, they seem to really come across as if they are, once they transition, they're lesbian, which just seems to back to me that they were either that they were straight men to begin with, and that for whatever reason they got, because they were, say, autistic on the spectrum, or they were having trouble, or they were a little off, or out of step, or felt out of place when they were younger, somebody somehow got them on that track. And by the time they were transitioned, they just simply identified with women and wanted to be with women. And that made them feel as if they were lesbians. But regardless, lesbians don't want, and no matter what you say to these people, they don't get it. If you're a lesbian, you don't want to sleep with anybody who's got a dick. You don't want dick. You're a lesbian. Under any circumstances, it's the last thing you want. And I'm sure gay men feel the same way. If it's, a man who becomes a trans woman, you don't want, or I'm sorry, the other way around, a woman becomes a trans man. That's not what you want at all. So I don't understand why these people don't understand why we don't want to sleep with them. And that's the huge gulf to me between sex and gender. Is that I am a same-sex attracted person. I don't want a male body. I don't care what you have done to your face, your hair, your clothing, breast implants. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want to see a dick. I'm not interested in that. I want a woman. And even if you've gone through bottom surgery, I know what a woman looks like. I've slept with women. I've been with women. I've lived with women. I know the difference. And I don't think you're going to be able to fool me. And it's not what I'm interested in. That's about all I have to say on that subject.
Thank you for sharing. Some might say that was a whole lot of transphobia, but we know it wasn't. So don't worry.
I apologize for that part.
No, not at all. It's fine. Honestly, I feel like people need to stop worrying about hurting other people's feelings, because typically the only feelings you're hurting are people that actually don't give a shit about your feelings, or your sexual orientation and what it is, and respecting your privacy or what you prefer. So yeah.
So my question is this: I'm a gay man, and I've always been attracted to men. And somebody was saying, things shouldn't have got this far. And somebody was also saying, if you're a lesbian, you're not attracted to a penis, yeah? But I don't think it's that clear cut, actually. I think, there are lesbians who historically have always been dating women, and then there's a trans female who is so female presenting that they may be attracted to them. And then actually they may decide to explore their sexualities in a way that they haven't explored before, and then end up being in a relationship with that lesbian with that trans woman who has a penis. Another scenario is where the trans female may have had bottom surgery, and the lesbian who's been a lesbian for her whole life then ends up dating that trans woman, knowing that she was trans, and knowing that she's had a vaginoplasty or bottom surgery. So what are we saying? That those two women who have been lesbians for their whole lives are now suddenly bisexual? Or are we saying that they're no longer lesbians? And I'm genuinely asking this as a question because my head is baffled by this. Like, part of me is like, there's another friend I had who was gay for his whole life, who is gay for his whole life. And he was like, yeah, I've got a boyfriend and that's a great, how's it going? Is that actually, Jimmy, it's going well, but he hasn't got a penis.
At the edge of being rude, can I just make a quick insertion so we could go to Admiral? Jimmy, you're hunting unicorns. From what I heard of Eileen's commentary, she was talking about the general rule. So your case, you're looking for that 1 in 10 million case that you're then trying to extrapolate out. Are there exceptions to every rule? Absolutely. I believe we all accept that. But that is not the general of what Eileen was commenting with regard to. Again, I do apologize for inserting myself.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not saying it's a dominant norm at all, but what I am, because I do know that most gay men, if you look at how straight men talk about boobs, you've seen nothing until you've seen gay men talk about penis, right? Like, my gay mates, it's just another level of dick obsession, just something else. But what I'm genuinely asking, because nuances matter, is what is the classification for those people? Like, if my gay friend who has always dated men and then ends up with a trans man boyfriend, are we saying he is not gay anymore because he's dating a biological woman, even though that his boyfriend was jacked up on steroids and looks very, very male presenting? And I just wonder, where do people sit on this? Because half of me is like, no, this is a sex-based, homosexuality is a sex-based definition. And if we're using sex-based definition, it doesn't matter about presentation. Well, then you're in a heterosexual relationship, regardless of that presentation, because this is a sex-based definition. But if you're not using a sex-based definition, well, then you end up diluting the word homosexuality to mean something that it doesn't.
That's what I would say. I would say that's not a gay relationship. I'm sorry. If it's supposed to be two men and one of the guys doesn't have a penis, how is that gay? Seriously, I am asking that as a very serious question.
I think the point that I wanted, the reason I had my hand up, I think I could sort of also deal with Jimmy's question. First, I just want to say that I've become friends with Eileen over a course of many spaces and many interactions and private interactions. And she is an amazing wealth of knowledge, and people should follow her because she's a tech literate person who grew up in the time when people were giving out hormones at lesbian bars, and there was a lot of slippery slope. So always talk to the OGs, and I know people get mad about this, but even when you're talking about transsexuals and stuff, talk to them, find out what the culture was, and when you know the history, you can build upon what is rapidly becoming changing history. We all know that the narrative was that Stormy started Stonewall because she got in an argument with the cops, and she's a black lesbian. And they've erased that, and then they've said, Malcolm Michaels Jr., who is a gay male, who said on video that he would always tell his tricks that he was dressed as a woman, but he didn't want violence from men who got tricked. So he'd always say, "Hey, I'm a boy." This is his words. I'm not saying boy because I'm infantilizing. He said, "I'm a boy. Don't get mad at me." And he said that he sold himself that. And what it goes back to Jimmy's point is that human beings are both mimetic, and the sexual binary is also visual, right? So I remember watching HBO one time, and I was with some girlfriend at the time, and we were watching like HBO Real Sex or something, and they were talking about transgender. It wasn't called, I don't even think it was called transgender. It depends if it was before 1998 or whatever. I can't remember. But they were saying that like a chicks with dicks, which is what they used to call it in the porn atmosphere, were popular with heterosexual males. And it's because males are visually stimulated to a certain point, and because they're the predators of the species. Like, this is unscientific language. I know, I apologize, but they're in the animal kingdom part of it, the lookers, the gazers, right? And so whatever somebody gets tripped about, but I think for women, the acceptance of the trans thing is more social. It's more community based. It's not that they're passing. It's more like an empathetic thing, because we all have our things, and that's not a clear delineated line. Human beings are mimetic, and why I wanted to bring this up is because I recently talked to a bunch of people who in different spaces, not even on Twitter, like in different spaces where we talk about strategic tactics to talk about policy. And what we talked about is like Blanchard and the Cantors and stuff who say that pedophiles are hardwired, and AGP and auto and androphilia on the female side, and all these different disorders, right? But we're at a critical mass where social contagion means that teenagers who learned it in school are not coming from a base level dysphoria. They're coming from a taught level where it's a social issue to them. So where you might have had a clearer picture studying this earlier with people who had these issues and had these dysphorias, and then you could have done the like endocrinologist studies of how they sniffed women pheromones. Now you have an issue where some of these people are trying it on like a pair of pants, right? And that's where you get the non-binaries and you get the specialists, because everybody here is older than a teenager. You remember, don't gloss over how you were. I was an idiot as a teenager. I did so many things that I could have killed myself because I was a teenager. I was actually driving on a road the other day, and I was in a van full of kids coming from a birthday party, and I looked over at my friend and I said, I used to ride this weird park road and turn the lights off at night and just drive in the dark to scare my friends. And she's like, you're an idiot. You could have killed yourself. Yes, I was 17 years old. I was an idiot. I had no idea about the world. I had no concept of consequences. I had no understanding of what the rest of my life would be. I had nothing to tell me about the future. I was impulsive. I was filled with hormones. I was trying to impress people. I was being, way out of line. And like, this is even before the internet. So like, the thing is that everything, the waters are never going to be clear on this, because it's been muddied by social contagion. And so why I do believe that there are true people who have dysphoria and they have to have treatment, and that we can't, the fact that they're trying to bar a certain kind of treatment means that they don't want people to desist. That is the one thing that like I've seen in the things that I'm personally researching, is that you get less clients if you let them choose a non-affirmation model, right? And so you may still have people who want to go through with it. And I've talked to people on spaces who are trans who they're not old enough to know the full effect of it, but they do feel like they do feel better from it. And I can't ignore that. And I don't want to sound like, Peter Tatchell talking about Peter Jar and having sex at 9 years old, because that's like a narrative. I'm just saying that to take that on face value, it's not a monolith. We're talking about monolithic structures within people who can adapt. If you put me into an internment camp, I'm going to adapt to it. If I have to eat grubs, and if I know that roaches come through the river every day on 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, that's feeding time for me. That doesn't mean that's the best practice for me. That means that's my survival instinct kicking in, because I'm a human being. I'm an animal, and I will adapt to anything that keeps me going. We need to look at each other as human beings, and we have to stop forcing an external hive brain over us, which is what the internet is, which is what is causing all these things. And so I don't want to read 100 articles about incels and YouTube algorithms and then be told that trans isn't also a form of communication that is spread virally, because we know everything is. Everything has a viral contagion factor to it. So gay kids are going to get messed up. Kids who are going to try on identity are going to get messed up because they're just not as masculine. They're not the sports people. They're people that don't even go out for the teams. I was a arty skateboarder, non physical jock kid. I was an arty smart kid. I don't know what the fuck would have happened if I was getting all this bad information, but I know that I followed a lot of bad leads when I was a kid, and the difference was I didn't have a bunch of adults putting a leash on me and dragging me in a certain direction. I was doing it myself, trying to find something in a void. And that's even healthier than what's going on now, because you don't want to guide kids that want to find out who they are. You have to give them fucking space so they can read. And so, like, I went into like Russian literature and stuff looking for the meaning of life, and not YouTube videos and TikToks. And there is a repetitive pattern. There's a hypnosis to things that go on Instagram and TikTok. There's a repetitive, recycled loop nature to it that is like hypnosis to me. And so, Jimmy, I respect you immensely, but I'm saying that the fact that there are people now giving up giving away their own homosexual identity, it can't be trusted. It can't be trusted. The lab has a leak. The lab has a bad, source of prototypes, because there's a strobe light going on. There's a constant strobe light that we are talking on right now. There is a phone in our hand that is constantly feeding us more information than I ever got from the first 2 decades of my life. And I feel the effect of it, and it's affected me negatively even on Twitter and stuff, where I had to adapt to me adapting to this socialization that goes on here. And I'm trying to keep up because I'm 46 years old and I'm aging into this. And people like Eileen and a bunch of people in this space keep me grounded with their stories of the historical things that went on in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s and the 60s to make the myth less powerful. You know what I'm saying? But to a 12-year-old who just heard that like gay rights were made by trans people, it's like, why is that happening if they're not trying to mislead people to something? I don't like. The reason I'm not a conspiracy theorist is because I don't know. I don't know, and I don't believe that anyone else knows. It's either narratives help politicians love the populace to be confused and arguing about something other than economic issues. So this is almost like a social distraction at some point to some people up the ladder.
Absolutely.
But we know that if we talk to people and we communicate with human beings and we talk to each other like we're doing in these spaces, that we find a truth and an understanding that they can't influence us beyond that. We find a love amongst ourselves.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to pass it on to by FJB, but I wanted to jump in as I don't know if I'm the only trans person in here. I quite frankly might
I'm also
be,
trans. Sorry.
Okay, awesome.
I am.
All right, so I'm gonna throw just my perspective on this whole sexual orientation thing. This is me speaking for me. I don't like the idea of, because I'm trans, whoever I date has to identify into a new sexual orientation. That's not something that I've ever done, and it's not something that I'm going to ever do, because in my opinion, that's pretty messed up. So when we break up, they go back to being something else. It's insane, and I'm just not going to do that. When I had a girlfriend and I transitioned when I was with her, she started questioning her sexual orientation, to which I said, I mean, nothing really changed except me. I don't really agree with this whole you now exploring your sexual orientation. It's insane, and it made me feel bad knowing that I'm making her confused and making her feel bad. And I'm again like I know there's other trans people here. If you don't agree, that's fine. But I just find that very just selfish for me to be like, you're dating me, but now guess what? You're straight or you're whatever. I'm not gonna do that. People see if I'm dating a girl, which is generally what I date. If I go out and they see me holding a hand with a girl, sure, on the surface might look like a straight couple, but deep down, I know that sexual orientation is based on sex, and I'm not about to go fuck with that. I'm not going to go into Wikipedia or whatever and be like, actually, sexual orientation was founded by trans people. We're changing it all. I mean, that's insane, and I'm not going to do that. And so I just wish we were more reasonable about this because, like, regardless, look, maybe I'm not comfortable.
I'm so confused. Can you just clarify that again? I have been paying attention.
What are you
5:25 a.m. But so what are you saying that actually if you are you trans?
Sorry, I'm female to male, and what I'm saying is the reality is, that if I'm dating a girl, technically, if we're talking about sex and sexual orientation, technically, yeah, that would make me a lesbian. Now, obviously, people don't see that because I've transitioned, and that's fine because that's why I did it. I transitioned, and that's for me. I shouldn't have to, and this is kind of where it also blows my mind. I'm constantly told that I'm living my true, authentic self. Well, if that's true, why would I be so bothered by anybody thinking that I might be a lesbian or bisexual or anything? Why would I care? And I don't. The answer is like me transitioning has helped me in many ways. So I date whoever I date. If that makes me a lesbian, or okay, whatever. If that makes me straight, whatever. I don't care. But I just don't like. Again, not anybody here right now, but I've been in a lot of spaces lately, probably too many, and I've heard gay men say things, and a lot of times they start off, showing reasonable concerns for their spaces and for them being gay men, feeling guilty for not dating trans men, and it's like, at some point you have to own up to the fact that homosexuality is not based on gender identity, and that's okay because not everything should be about me. And I kind of just wanted to get that out there because I found myself, somebody was talking about sexual, I think it was you, Jimmy, but
it was me. I'm still not clearer. Not clearer as to what is the category that you're saying that should go in. So if you're female to male and you're dating a woman, are you saying that you are then in a heterosexual relationship, or are you saying that you are in a lesbian relationship, or are you saying that depending on what definition you use, that would determine the distinction?
What I'm saying is, personally, me, I don't ever go around saying that I'm a lesbian or I'm straight or anything like that. I just date whoever I date, and that's that. But what I will say is, if we're talking about like keeping up with stats and things like that, should I be put down as a lesbian, or should I be put down as a trans man dating women? Like that to me is a little bit different. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not invested in like over my sexual orientation and identity as much as I guess your average trans person. But what I'm saying is like, factually speaking, if we're going by the definition, I mean, yeah, I'm a homosexual. I'm a transsexual homosexual, if you want to call it that. Dick, I believe you're next.
Just by way of introduction, I'm probably one of the OGs in the room. I'm in my mid-50s. My introduction to the community was when I was probably about 13, 14. I am familiar with old guard traditions as per Stuttgart, Germany. I've been around the kink community since I was old enough to drive, I guess. And at a certain level, part of the reason I was interested when I saw the title of the room is I'm old enough to remember when there really was a community. We weren't balkanized. I remember being in spaces, in real spaces, real-time, real-world spaces with human beings and everything. And the motto was, freaks of the world unite. And that was for every one of us. It didn't matter what your plumbing was. It didn't matter what your personal interest in sex was. It didn't matter what none of that mattered. We were there because we were the community protecting each other, taking care of each other, and satisfying each other's needs on multiple levels. And at a certain level, I think that's what I'm finding disconcerting today. And Admiral did a great job talking about how the information stream is corrupting. I wish I had a better word, but that really is the word. It's corrupting the process. But we all know that there are people who are non-standard. We know that there are gay and trans and all the other subdivisions. The problem is we are so focusing on those subdivisions that we are balkanizing the community to the point that the community does not assist each other anymore. And again, worst case scenario, treat me like I'm the drunk uncle that showed up and had one drink too many. So none of this is attacking anyone in this room. I assure you, my intent is to maybe remind us that this used to be bigger than whether or not I got laid. This used to be bigger than, did you put the right pronoun on a goddamn email to me? This used to be bigger than that. This used to be about people's lives. I remember my uncle, who in today's parlance would probably be gender fluid, pansexual, submissive. I could give him 15 different descriptions. Getting his head cracked in with what would have been the equivalent of a mag light flashlight one time because he was coming out of the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong town and spending weeks in the hospital in recovery. And that's what the community used to be about. It used to be about making sure that didn't happen anymore. Now the community is about, when I literally stumbled through this room, I heard Eileen speaking, and I thought she did a great job of explaining how careful she was trying to be not to offend any trans. And Mars, you've done a wonderful job. But what I heard was somebody might have thought that was transphobic, but we all know they're not. And the first thing that went through my head was, how the fuck did what Eileen say how did we get as a society to where what Eileen said with such care and such clear concern and help for the community and everything had to be given a goddamn caveat because somebody was going to drive by who's decided that if I don't want to fuck you and I don't want you to fuck me, then somehow or other I have committed a hate crime. And quite honestly, I'm to the position where I'm ready to tell everybody to fuck off. Because
please do.
It really used to be. I've been in rooms, and I do remember, and I'm talking, party environments. I'm talking charitable events. Dudes, anyone else in here remember when AIDS was anally injected death syndrome? Anybody else go that distance with me? Anybody else been around long enough to know that Anthony Fauci was a piece of shit in the 80s? Anyone else?
Yes. Anthony Fauci needs to fucking hang.
There you
He's
go.
a criminal, evil bastard.
And the only reason I'm bringing that up is
I love this.
And the only reason I'm bringing that up is I really do want you to understand. This is coming from a place of love, from what Admiral described as an OG. And I am going to pull rank. And that's just how it works because, like I said, I came from the old guard environment. I'm pulling rank, motherfuckers. So, at a certain level.
You got stars over me, but not over Eileen. Okay.
Well, no. I know Eileen is the voice of knowledge. I've seen Eileen a couple places. And all I'm trying to do is I want to dial in. Let's stop focusing on the minuscule. Now, I do understand, Mars, that you're trying to define yourself. And I will take you back that the one rule that has always been pervasive, no matter what the room, no matter what the environment, no matter what the reason for the gathering was, informed consent. That was the one rule. So if you're hanging out and you're presenting as a male, I'm kind of going to sort of presume you're a male. If you decide that you want me and you to do anything beyond hanging out, it is your obligation to give me information. Therefore, I can make informed consent. Now, where we start losing ground is you're giving me information does not entitle me to treat you any lesser. It does not entitle me to disrespect you. It does not entitle me to call you names and make you feel bad. Part of the problem is we've gotten to the point where we want And this, I guess this was the unicorn hunt thing, because I think it's what I was getting with Jimmy. We are focusing on, we're talking about a general population of what, 5, 6, 8% globally, maybe. And now we're talking about the trans community, which is what a population of that 5%. It's a population of what? 0.5%, 0.25%, a full percent, pick some. So out of 7.5 billion freaking people on the planet, we are beating this goddamn thing to death over what is probably a couple of hundred, 300, 500,000 people. Now, don't get me wrong. All those 500,000 people are wonderful human beings. Their lives should be respected. Their intellects, their dreams, their whatever it is should all be respected. But it shouldn't become a goddamn Supreme Court case every time a woman who hasn't had bottom surgery but is dressing like a man wants to have sex with me, which implies she's gay. We get in the damn bedroom, she takes off her clothes, and she ain't got the hardware to do it. She showed up with a 12-inch dildo. I'm sorry, me changing my mind at that fucking moment does not make me transphobic. It makes you false advertising. Now, you figure out how to communicate with me so that that moment never occurs. That's what we used to call personal responsibility. And I guess that's kind of the end of my rant. Thank you guys so much for listening to me for a second.
That was amazing. Thank you. I do want to say, Dick, you were saying, that you're kind of reaching this point where you just want to tell people to fuck off. And I mean, honestly, sometimes I think maybe that's perhaps what needs to happen. Because I think the idea of live and let live, wherever the hell that went, needs to come back. We've forgotten. Everybody needs to be in everybody's business. You have to know exactly what I believe in, how I feel, and how I identify all the time. I don't even have time for that. But you need to know. And yeah, who cares?